Big American brands like Coca-Cola and McDonald's are suddenly playing down their Americanness overseas. Public broadcasters like NPR and PBS say they're crippled after Trump's budget cuts. In Hollywood, directors push back as AI, artificial intelligence, threatens to turn filmmaking into an assembly line. Democrats prepare to use a shutdown fight as political leverage, and the new cancel culture. It's not hitting conservatives, it's firing critics of Charlie Kirk. All that and more today. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and welcome. This is Filtered, your Saturday edition. So happy to be with all my friends here on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, Instagram, and our friends today on TikTok. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the show where we look at the top, typically 5 stories of the day, business stories, technology, and culture stories, and filter it through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you more successful. That's really my promise to you. If you spend a little time with me each day, you'll learn more about the world, but you won't just get depressed. It's not just doom scrolling. You'll actually learn skills that you can use in your own professional life as well as your own personal life. Let's dive right in with story 1. American brands pretend to be local abroad. According to the Wall Street Journal, some of America's biggest names, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and Procter & Gamble, are trying a new strategy in Europe, downplaying their American roots. Over the summer, Coca-Cola ran a Made in Germany campaign in Hamburg and pushed a British miniseries featuring small local shopkeepers. McDonald's and Procter & Gamble followed suit with ads highlighting how integrated they are into local communities. The move reflects growing sensitivity in Europe about U.S. influence and globalization. Rather than leaning on their American heritage, these brands are stressing national ties to reassure consumers they're not just foreign multinationals. As the Wall Street Journal notes, the marketing twist is meant to build trust and loyalty at a time when American corporate dominance often draws skepticism. Iconic U.S. brands have a new pitch for European consumers. We're from here too. That's according to the journal. So what's the real message here? American companies for decades have gotten a free pass around the world. You're American? Come right in. We already hold you in high esteem. Those days are over. This current administration has thumbed its nose at so many countries around the world that people are starting to despise American companies and some Americans. And that's why the Coca-Colas, the McDonald's of the world are now stressing their local ties to communities in countries around the globe. So let's dig a little deeper here. Conservatives are correct when they say so often when people get a hold of the levers of government, they think they're doing good. And in fact, there's all sorts of unintended consequences. Libertarians have famously made the case that you force everyone on an airplane to put even a small child in buy a seat for them. They switch to cars, and cars kill a lot more people than planes ever do. So you actually create more death, even though it's a well-meaning regulation saying every infant had to be in their own seat with their own seatbelt. Well, that's exactly the case here. Conservatives are right again, although it's seemingly one of their own doing it. We're seeing policies in Washington that have all sorts of unintended spillover effects that have a negative impact on American businesses. Now, in my day job as a media trainer, communications coach, and presentation skills coach, and personal development skills coach to leaders around the world, I travel firsthand to a lot of different nations, spend a lot of time in Europe, Asia, other places. And I can tell you, yes, since about November 2016, there's been a palpable difference in the level of respect Americans and American institutions receive overseas. I've had the privilege of working in about 45 nations. And I have to tell you, sometimes when people ask, where am I from? I say, oh, I'm from North America. The U.S. brand is so tainted by, shall we say, certain leaders here. Now, if you're new to this show, this is not primarily a political punditry show. We're here to help business people, ambitious people in their careers by looking at top business technology stories. But politics does touch on all of these things, and sometimes more than ever. So it's impossible to simply eradicate any reference points. Let's look at some of the facts here going on, because this is a growing problem for American-made companies. I want to give you a few more facts published by the Wall Street Journal. By the way, I do often quote the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, media outlets from across the political spectrum. Coca-Cola sells made in Germany in Hamburg. Hamburg, by the way, one of the most beautiful towns I've ever been in. Great place. And they are selling it as basically not American, made in Germany. More and more brands, according to the journal, are pitching themselves as local in Europe. Coca-Cola is emphasizing British shopkeepers in recent efforts. They're trying to reassure European consumers about globalization, and they're just downplaying. They're not flying that American flag everywhere because it simply hurts in the eyes of their consumers. You know, we as Americans have been spoiled. We've had it so good. Our companies have been welcomed with open arms around the world. Investors from around the world have plowed so much money in US-based publicly traded corporations. It's frankly made it easier to make money in the stock market if you just own the S&P 500 than if you live in any other country and invest in a basket of their stocks. We've had it good. We've had it great for a long time. We've had so many benefits. We're the privileged, spoiled child. We don't even realize how good we have it. And it may be that those days are over. I'm not preaching the end or predicting the end of America, Inc. I'm not predicting the end of major American corporations like Apple. But the days of us automatically getting the benefit of the doubt, of automatically being embraced by consumers around the world, of automatically getting a premium to our stock in our American companies, those days really may be at the very end. And it didn't have to be this way. We willingly threw away our advantages for no rational reason. More in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Thanks for listening. If you like today's episode, you'll love my online courses at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Check them out now and level up your skills. We are back. Today is Filtered with TJ Walker. I am your host. As always, we're looking at the top stories of the day on this Saturday, issue 2. U.S. public media stations face existential threat after cuts. According to the New York Times, the elimination of $500 million in federal support for public broadcasting has left NPR and PBS affiliates across the country struggling to survive. The cuts, pushed through by President Trump and Republicans in Congress, shut down the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and wiped out a key funding source for hundreds of local stations. In Warm Springs, Oregon, the tribal station KWSO may drop All Things Considered to focus on Native programming. In South Dakota, KILI Radio is selling off old records to keep the lights on. And in rural Kansas, Smoky Hills PBS faces the possibility of severing ties with TBS entirely, jeopardizing beloved children's shows and local coverage. We are crippled here, said Betsy Schwang, general manager of Smoky Hills PBS. The Times reports that without new revenue, many rural communities could lose their only source of local news and cultural programming, leaving conservative talk radio as the dominant voice in the airwaves. Okay, so what's the real message here? Public television, public radio in America is finished as we know it. Will some programs survive? Yes, they will, but only if they cultivate strong relationships with their viewers, with their supporters. People willing to say, I like you so much, here's my $10 a month. But that is going to mean that a lot of small stations in rural areas that provide the only source of news and information that isn't just Fox News rechanneled through local conservative host, they're going to be gone, and there's going to be an information void in many small communities around the country. That only makes democracy worse. Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. This is an area where I happen to be somewhat contrarian to a lot of my friends in the centrist position. By the way, if you're new to the show, I'm a sensible centrist. I voted for politicians of varying political parties. I'm a centrist, and I call it like it is. I try to bring you objective reality based on communication skills. And I see objectively, a lot of people at NPR and PBS are living in the past. It's simply irrational to pay a station to have a big building and big towers and big satellites to take a feed from Washington to replay it to get All Things Considered. Someone can just listen to All Things Considered on a podcast. Now, I have been a guest commentator. I've appeared on numerous shows on PBS and NPR over the years. Everyone's always been nice. I've done regular commentary for, I believe it was WFSU in Tallahassee, Florida, way back in the 1980s. So I've had wonderful relationships with public TV. My first experiences with media were watching Mr. Rogers on a local PBS station before he went national. This was in the 1960s in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where Mr. Rogers was from and where he broadcast from. So I am not battling PBS for some ideological reason of thinking they're too far left or anything. That's frankly a bunch of nonsense. But I do think they're in the past with this idea you have to have big offices, big TV studios, the latest equipment, executives who go to conventions all the time. That's just not the way the modern world works. Now, we're seeing it again and again in traditional commercial TV. You're seeing creators like, Stephen Colbert. He's going to lose his 200-person staff, and he's going to have a staff of about 5 for his podcast. And this podcast may end up getting more viewers than his CBS late night show. You simply don't need that much staff, that much overhead, that many buildings, that many big cameras anymore to really produce content. One of my beefs, frankly, with not only NPR, PBS, but with a lot of commercial broadcasting companies, is that so much money went for infrastructure and for overhead and for executives who no one really knows what they do. And this is back in the days when I was trying to make a name for myself as a commentator and a talk show host. I think the most I ever made was a Voice of America paying me $400, not an hour, not per commentary, but per month. And that was me giving them weekly commentaries broadcast around the world back in the 90s. So I've always kind of resented the fact that whether it's commercial TV and radio or public radio and TV, the person actually creating the show and putting their face on camera often were the ones paid the least, unless they got to the status of an Oprah Winfrey or a Howard Stern. And of course, PBS doesn't have those. We do live in an era now where the actual creator, the person taking the risk, the person putting their face on camera, putting their face on TikTok, they are the ones getting the biggest compensation. And at some level, I have to think that is a fairer thing. That is a good thing. In a perfect world, would we have public TV and radio with unlimited resources? Sure. But in a time when so many people are not even getting the food they need, the vaccines they need. And yes, people do need vaccines. To spend limited government money when we're running a $2 trillion deficit, creating more video and audio content at a time when we're all awash in video and audio content, to me, that's not a rational use of funding. So I wish all the people who work at NPR and PBS stations good luck. But I think they're going to have to be more creative at really demonstrating their value, getting advertisers, getting sponsors, getting donors, getting members, all the things online creators are doing. The traditional PBS, NPR world is going to have to do the same, or they're simply going to be extinct, and there's not much anyone can do about it. Mansoor is saying hello, says good experience and good presentation. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts. By the way, we do this show every day live, and it's also available on demand. Mansoor, if you haven't done so yet, if you could do me a favor and please go to your favorite podcasting platform. You're watching this right now, I can see on Facebook, and we're happy to have you here. But if you ever listen to podcast on a podcast app, on Apple, on YouTube Music, on Spotify, on Podcatcher, on any of these podcasting apps, please search for Filtered with TJ Walker, follow it or subscribe it, give it a rating, and leave a review. It would be extraordinarily helpful at this stage of our show's development because, well, we're less than 2 weeks old. The show will be 2 weeks old officially as a podcast on Wednesday. So reviews right now are very, very helpful and extremely useful. So please consider doing that. If you are watching this on YouTube, TikTok, anyplace else, please give us a thumbs up, like us, follow us, set the bell for notifications, leave comments. It would be very, very much appreciated. More in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Hollywood battles the AI movie machine at this year's Toronto International Film Festival. The clash between human creativity and machine-made movies was on full display. According to The Hollywood Reporter, AI startups are pitching studios tools to mass produce 1,000 films a year, restore old footage, and even reform classics like The Wizard of Oz. Filmmakers pushed back. Guillermo del Toro warned, "We live in a world that now wants to tell us loud and clear that art is not important. They want to insist it can be done by an app." Directors like Richard Linklater and Nia DaCosta emphasized rehearsal, emotion, and interpretation, the things machines can't replicate. Meanwhile, lawsuits swirl. Warner Brothers is suing Midjourney for copyright infringement, and Anthropic agreed to $1.5 billion in settlements with authors. Yet investors keep pouring money into the AI movie factory. Hollywood may only have room for one vision: humanist art or algorithmic content. The fight is just beginning. Okay, what's the real bottom line here? AI is coming for Hollywood. It's coming for not just Uber drivers, not just radiologists, not just people doing low-level work, but it's coming for big-time Hollywood directors, producers, writers, and actors. So get ready. They're coming whether you like it or not. What does this really mean? Let's dig a little deeper here. All of us like to think we do something unique and special, that we cannot be replaced by a machine. And at some level, that's hubris. I'm full of it. Chances are you're full of it. I've seen recent surveys where drivers are asked, Uber drivers, are you worried about artificial intelligence replacing you in robotic cars? And many of them say, oh, no, No, I'm what I do can't be done by, well, that's just delusion. The human brain is unique. It's powerful. Yes, it's special, but the human brain has created artificial intelligence and it's creating it to get better faster than human beings do. We don't want to admit that. I don't like to admit that at some point, an AI clone may analyze and dissect the news better than I do, but it's certainly possible. Now, I'm trying to prepare. Those of you who've heard me and you've seen the ads, I have my own AI clone, tjwalker.ai, which can analyze you if you want to speak to it, and it can analyze your speech. It can analyze your backdrop, your lighting, whether you touch your hand too much. It can do it actually better than I can in many cases. My clone's available 24 hours a day, speaks 32 languages, and gives advice the way I do. So I already know in my own profession, in my own job, AI can do in some respects a better job. So it only makes sense that Hollywood movies could do it. We're seeing books written now, nonfiction books written quickly, supposedly right after the assassination of Charlie Kirk here in the United States. Amazon was flooded with books, full-length books. We're talking 30, 40, 50, 60,000 word books written, and they were written by AI. Now, I haven't read any of them, but presumably some of them did a good job of aggregating all the other news out there from journalistic enterprises and organizing it in a systematic way, which is what nonfiction writers do. Are we really going to live in a world where a Martin Scorsese or a younger Martin Scorsese can't make a unique vision of a movie? I don't think we're going to be there anytime soon, but let's not kid ourselves. So much of what Hollywood turns out is slop. It's, people like to talk about AI slop. Well, what do you call a Marvel movie that's got, 50 different characters of Marvel IP that have been around for 80 years, and they're all interacting and fighting, and it's, good guys versus bad guys. Can AI do a better job of that? Yeah, I think it can. And if it's a little bit worse, who can tell? How will anyone even notice? I think what we're going to see is a lot of the bottom tier filmmakers cut out, mid-tier filmmakers cut out, people who are sort of in a groove and doing the same old thing cut out. And we're going to see a new breed of filmmakers who are auteurs at a different level. They're not just the director, but they're the creator, the writer. They are the stars. They're orchestrating everything with how they prompt the AI to make the movie. We're going to see a new generation of auteur, and it's not going to be one that is skilled in raising money. I was listening to Woody Allen speak the other day on Bill Maher's webcast, and he was just talking about the tremendous pressure as a filmmaker that every year you got to go out and raise another 20, 30, $40 million. And he's been good at it. He's made 50 movies. But there are a lot of people in the world who are creative and are not good at asking people for $50 million. I've not been successful at raising $50 million. Have you? That's hard. So to the extent that we can now have creators who are good just at creating a movie using AI, it's a different skill set. Doesn't make it necessarily worse than somebody who's good at raising $50 million, like a Francis Ford Coppola, although he had to put his own money in his last movie. It's a different skill set. The world is always changing. The skills you need to survive are always changing. That's the one thing that's consistent. So my message to you in your own business, in your own career is, rather than panicking about AI, you and I have to think every single day about how are we using AI to be more effective. I'm using AI right now to synthesize the news sources, to come up with my news script. There is AI helping me create images that I put on the screen. This, not that one, but others, images we're seeing that I've put up on my screen. And that's a part of reality. That is what we're doing these days. I put up the wrong one. There we go. There's the right screen. Those of you listening on the podcast, we also have text graphics, images on the screen when we're doing this show on YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, X, and all the other social media platforms. So the image right there next to the text is AI generated. So I'm using it. So I can't tell you I'm pure and holier than thou, but I'm trying to use it in a way of enhancing my own insights, my own creativity. That is what I think is the real solution here. Back in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill and it's trainable. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Democrats poised to use shutdown leverage. According to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, Democrats are signaling they'll withhold votes on the next funding bill unless popular items are restored, starting with Affordable Care Act subsidies. Opinion writer Jonathan Alter argues Democrats can, quote, avoid blame for a shutdown while benefiting from the negotiations to end it, if they focus on three issues: health, tariffs, and troops in the streets. Meanwhile, congressional Democrats tell the Journal that restoring ACA tax credits is the minimum price of their vote, as premiums are set to spike next year. The strategy echoes Bill Clinton's 1995-96 playbook: hammer a few widely popular priorities and let Republicans own the pain. With only 36% approving of President Trump's handling of inflation, Democrats see public opinion at their backs. The bet: frame a shutdown as a fight to cut costs, protect healthcare, and keep soldiers out of domestic policy. Then force Republicans to explain why they are blocking it. So that's really the issue coming up here. Let's dive a little deeper. So what's the real message here in this potential shutdown of the federal government? It's time Democrats develop a spine. It's time they play the same game Republicans have played. They need to say, no, we are shutting down the government. If this current administration continues to show absolute contempt for Congress's role in how this country rules, then we are going to use the one force of power we have. We can shut it down. We can stop funding, because Congress does still control the purse strings, and the debt ceiling will not be raised without at least some votes from Democrats. And it's one thing we know from voters: they don't punish a party that shuts down the government. They didn't punish the Republicans in 1995 or any other time. So for the Democrats, this may be the very last chance they have to keep any semblance of government before it completely slides into authoritarianism. Let's go a little bit deeper here. It's a complex issue. It's a tough issue. There's no easy answers. Senator Schumer, the Democratic leader, got a lot of criticism for caving in to this very same issue early in the administration back in January. A lot of people wanted him to stand, or February, wanted him to stand up to Trump, and he didn't want to shut down the government. His point rightfully so, is, hey, as Democrats, we are the ones who actually believe in government working. We're the ones worried about all the people who wouldn't get basic services. So we can't just demagogically stand up and say, let's shut the government down. Okay, that did make sense. I'm not one of the harsher critics of Senator Schumer, but things are different now. We are seeing every single day erosions of traditional separations of power in this country. We're seeing power stripped away from Congress every day. We're seeing more and more moves towards, frankly, lawless authoritarianism, a new type of monarchy. This may be the thing to do a reset in our country. It's certainly the thing that would get the public's attention, because when the government shuts down, everybody's affected. The stock markets, everybody's affected, because the federal government, like it or not, does have its hand in almost everything. So I think it's high time the Democrats play hardball. Many of them are fearful that they're going to get blamed by the voters. And yes, they will that day. They will that week. But if you're thinking long term, there's simply no discernible empirical evidence that voters punish a political party in the next election because of a government shutdown. So you have to really factor in the pros and cons and the wins and losses here. Many people subscribe to the theory, and I do as well, that the Democrats are losing every single day. When Trump is able to continue to make tariffs, even though our Constitution says tariffs have to be reviewed and supported by the Congress, it's destroying our democracy. When he continually does things like trying to eliminate Federal Reserve governors, even though that's not how our government is set up, it's destroying democracy. When he's completely ignoring legal precedent in field after field after field, when he's sending American soldiers to American cities in absolute contempt for all American traditions and laws, at some point you got to say enough is enough. This would be a way of making that statement. Will there be pain short term? Yes. Will a lot of Democratic voters, will a lot of low income voters across the spectrum and in other parties be hurt? Yes. But I don't know how else you get people to actually pay attention. So we'll see. I don't have a lot of confidence that the Democrats are going to have the backbone to do this. But every day there seem to be more and more of them upset with what's going on. So we will see. That's coming up in just a week or so. Let's skip now to issue 5, the new cancel culture. Praise Kirk or get fired. According to the Washington Post, dozens of Americans have lost their jobs over social media posts criticizing conservative activist Charlie Kirk after his assassination. And to be clear, I think it was horrible he was assassinated, and I'm hoping for, full punishment if someone is, if the current suspect who's been arrested is convicted. An assistant dean at Middle Tennessee State University, a FEMA data analyst, a Carolina Panthers staffer, and even MSNBC analyst Matthew Dowd were all terminated or suspended after remarks deemed insensitive. MSNBC President Rebecca Cutler said Dowd's words were inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable. Here's the irony. Kirk himself openly boasted the January 6th insurrection. On January 5th, he tweeted, "The historic event will likely be one of the largest and most consequential in American history. Turning Point Action and Students for Trump are sending more than 80 buses full of patriots to D.C. to fight for this president." Afterward, he downplayed the violence, insisting, it was not an insurrection. Yet the riot left real casualties. U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick died the next day after suffering a stroke following assaults by rioters. Protester Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed as she tried to break into the speaker's lobby. Kirk praised those who stormed the Capitol, even those connected to violence. But today, anyone who points out his record risks being canceled. Conservatives long warned of conservative cancel culture. What we see now here is its inversion, not the left purging dissent, but a demand that Americans publicly honor a man who once cheered on an attack that killed a police officer and punish those who won't. Okay, what's the real message here? Of course, it's a tragedy that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. But we now live in this bizarro world of cancer culture, where anyone who wants to criticize Charlie Kirk, their careers are over. No criticism is allowed. That's political correctism. That's right-wing wokeism. And it's a huge, huge problem. Let's not forget, not saying he deserved it, but this was the guy who cheered on the attacks on our country, on police officers on January 6th. And let's not forget, people died because of the violence of January 6th, and Charlie Kirk endorsed it. Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. Yes, there have been times when the so-called left in America, whatever that is, has violated, has protested a little too strongly. Oh my gosh, Aziz Ansari made a date uncomfortable. Let's end his career. Okay, in retrospect, that went way too far. But the idea that no one can criticize Charlie Kirk without having their career ended, that is cancel culture going too far. Now, if you invite someone to a family funeral and the person's saying nasty things about the person in the casket in front of loved ones, okay, wildly inappropriate. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, Matthew Dowd making perfectly fact-based observations about the career of Charlie Kirk and some of the more inflammatory, incendiary things he promoted, seeing his career over, or at least canceled as a commentator for MSNBC. And we're seeing it again and again and again, as I mentioned in the newsread. It's happening in mom and pop companies, small companies, bigger companies, where if someone is perceived to have said something that hurt my feelings, if I'm a MAGA lover and a Charlie Kirk, if it hurts my feelings, you deserve to lose your job. Now, where have we heard about that before? Oh, yeah, that's what conservatives have been telling us is wrong with the so-called left cancel culture in America. And now it's come back stronger than ever. I don't know if it's a parody, a satire, but this is the real problem. Right-wing cancel culture is growing. It's growing every single day in America, and it is the real problem. Again, I want to stress, Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick died the day after the attacks, in large part, according to medical analysis, the stress created from being attacked. He did die of a stroke the very next day. Matthew Dowd, fired from a cushy perch as a contributor at MSNBC. Dozens of other workers have been fired or suspended. And yet, Kirk bragging about sending buses of patriots to fight our own United States government, to participate in violence, that gets a free pass. So we are living in a world where there's simply no accountability, and right-wing wokeism is running amok. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you for spending time with me today. If you saw anything here you like, please like it, comment on it, share it, and come back tomorrow. Thanks. See you tomorrow.